Okay, what's going on, guys? I think we're live here. Let me check my settings. Okay, we're good to go. Okay, what's going on, guys? I think we're live here. Appeared that way. Okay, welcome everyone to tonight's training. I'd like to get started as soon as possible. I will give it another, just a couple minutes. What's going on, guys? I think we're live here. Appeared that way. Okay, welcome everyone to tonight's training. Would please type in the chat as soon as possible. I will give it another. Okay, what's going on, guys? I think we're live here. Is okay. Okay, welcome everyone. In the meantime, training. Would please type in the chat as soon as possible. I will give it another. Okay, what's going on, guys? I think we're live here. Is okay. Okay, welcome everyone. In the meantime, training. Would please type in the chat as soon as possible. I will give it another. Going on. Okay, what's going on, guys? I think we're live here. Is okay. Okay, welcome everyone. In the meantime, training. Would please type in the chat as soon as possible. I will give it another. Going on. Okay, what's going on, guys? Okay, welcome everybody. If you hear something like that, yeah, I just turned off the feedback. Forget to do that sometimes. Hopefully that should stop in a second. But please confirm. What's up, Tim? Good to see you, man. Please let me know if that stopped. And any of my students that are here, guys, please let me know that you guys are here as well. I'll probably save some of your personal stuff. Some of you guys I texted back already on some issues. Some of you guys have calls coming up with, but anything personal, since we're on YouTube today, I'll save for either our private chat or our group Zinc, our group Zoom. Okay, cool, awesome. All right, cool. So I'm gonna get going in like 2 more minutes here. In the meantime, listen, I want this to be interactive. We're gonna be learning about property analysis today. But if you have questions about wholesaling, general stuff, struggles you're having, I am gonna have some time for Q&A. So please go ahead and drop that in the chat right now. And if it pertains to what we're talking about, I can address it immediately or at that time. Or if not, if it's just a general question, I'll save it till the end. And cool. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. All right, welcome, guys. Heather, if you do hear back from that dude tonight, let me know. I didn't give him a call yet, but if you don't hear back, I will call him. But definitely looks like potential there. Tracy, I texted you back, so we'll catch up on what I sent you as well. All right, cool. So I'm gonna give it 2 more minutes, and I'm gonna let you guys put your questions in the meantime, and then we're gonna get started. Meantime, make sure I got all my stuff pulled up here. And for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. Always good to see some new faces. Get a little calculator ready here. Yeah, that's another thing, guys. As you're watching, if you have dual screens or if you can split your screen, I highly recommend that you have an external browser open, as well as a calculator. Just pull up the calculator on your computer. Nothing complicated here, obviously. But yeah, it's going to be important as we go through this. You guys are not just watching, but you're actively participating, right? So you are invested in the training and that you're doing it alongside with me. And the only way, just like anything else, right? I always talk about reps and putting the reps in. It's important that you're just doing this over and over. You can't watch one YouTube video, okay, I get the formula, and then kind of think you've got it. It's not as straightforward as many videos will kind of make it look like, or a lot of trainings. And it does take some practice to get very good at, and also to try and increase your speed. So I'm going to encourage you guys as we go through this to please do it alongside with me. All right. So on that note, looks like I'm going to get started. Again, any questions you guys have, just feel free to drop it right there in the chat. Got a couple bullet points, couple notes here I want to mention. All right, so I think we're good to go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to tonight's group call. This is Friday, September 26th. So tonight we're going to be talking about is property analysis, how to analyze properties, how to run your comps, and make your offers a lot easier, a lot faster. And today we're going to be focusing on how to do that all for free. And specifically, this is primarily geared towards my beginners. It's also a very budget conscious way of doing this. And so we're going to be utilizing some free tools. Now, of course, there are some amazing tools out there. One of my favorites probably going to be Privy for using your comps. It's kind of not what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to be doing this again a little bit differently than what you've probably been taught before, what you've seen in other YouTube videos, and also what is kind of the traditional way to analyze these properties. And specifically, what I'm going to be giving you today is what I have coined the quick comp method. And this is how you can look at a property and quickly determine approximately what it's worth. Now, this is going to, as I said, be very different from the traditional way. And I'm going to show you why. A couple of steps to this, couple of pieces to this, and I'll explain it as we go along. But understand, if you're watching this training as a cash buyer, for example, an investor who's looking to maybe purchase a property, this might be a good first step for you, but this is not going to be sufficient for you. The difference here is that a cash buyer, your comps have to be really, really tight. You've got to be very detailed with them. And you are taking on the risk, right? This is your investment. So when you're running your comps and you're doing your property analysis, you don't want to be making some of the assumptions that I'm going to be giving you today. For example, if you have two properties and you're comparing them, and one is 1,000 square feet and your property is 700 square feet, as wholesalers, we have this kind of wiggle room where we can do some estimating, just, again, quick comps. But if you were a cash buyer, right? You're a flipper. You're going to take that, let's say that subject house, that's the comp, and you're going to take the sold price. You're going to divide it by 1,000 square feet. Then you're going to get the price per square footage. You're going to drop that into your formula. You're going to multiply it by what I say your house was 700 square feet. And so you have to be a lot more detail oriented and really thorough with your comps if you're doing this, I used to say properly, but properly in that context. So that's kind of not what we're doing today. We're not acting as the very end buyer, and I'm going to explain to you why that is, okay? So in order to do that, before we get into the exercise, again, I want this to be very much interactive and, something that you can take some tangible information and practice it. Before we do that, I've got to explain to you a little bit of the methodology here. And so with that, we're going to lay down some foundational rules. I'm going to give you some concepts, ideology, some mental shifts maybe, and show you that despite this being different from what most people teach and how they teach it, I'm going to show you why this has worked for me. And obviously, I've been here since 2012. I've done this multiple ways, right? So I'm just going to show you, this is just one way of doing it. Remember, when you watch videos and you see trainings, nothing's ever black and white, okay? There's no universal rules for most of this stuff. So this is going to be a tool to put in your tool belt, a little something in your arsenal. It's going to help you out quite a bit. And the reason I like this, doing it this way, most often, is because you want to be very fast, okay? In the game of wholesaling, everything you do, speed is king. So that means if a motivated seller leaves you a voicemail or they drop a contact form off on your website, you need to get back to them immediately. The faster you get back to them, the better. The faster you do everything, the faster you send over the contract, the faster you run your comps, the faster you give an offer. All of those steps all increase the chance that you have of closing your deal. Every time you slow down or you don't move with a sense of urgency, the chance of doing that deal or someone else coming in and scooping it up from under you, especially if it's a good deal, that goes down. Now, of course, this stuff does happen. There are times, I got to talk to the seller, right? I got to talk to my wife, or they have to leave the phone call, or they request a call back. Or some wholesalers, okay, well, I have to talk to my underwriter. I have to talk to this third party and I'll call you back. Then a day goes by. I mean, sometimes that stuff is kind of inevitable, but you really want to minimize that because every time you do that, again, the chances of you getting that deal done, they go down. Okay, so really the purpose of this quick comp method is to say, are we in the same ballpark at least, right? And again, there's a whole process to this, so don't let me lose you in the beginning. But what that means is, listen, if I want to offer $100,000 on a property based on a quick guess, quick estimation here, which I shouldn't say guess because there is a formula, there's some logic, and there's some math to this, and we're doing the work. But let's say I'm thinking about 100, right? That's kind of where I'm at, and the seller's asking for 150. that's close enough in the ballpark where it's worth my time, and I feel like we can come to a mutually beneficial place. Now, if I run my quick comp and my number is 90 and this seller wants $300,000, well, we're just too far off. Okay, I'm not even going to pursue it. Save your time, move on to the next one. So that's kind of the first piece of this. And then also, I'll tell you different factors I look at depending on source of the deal, the nature of the deal. So obviously off market, we're really listening to the seller's needs, being empathetic to that, understanding the needs is not always price, right? It could be how fast you can get them out and what they're willing to settle for. There's always going to be a story behind that. On market, going to be a little bit different, right? Because, you do the process a little bit different, right? You have to make your offer first, but there are other things that I will take into consideration. For example, if a property looks like a really good deal, and it's been on market for 2 days, I know there's going to be some competition there. I know I can't lowball that. So I know my offer has to be a little bit higher, even maybe higher than the max allowable offer formula for me to have a shot at it. Now, if the property's been on market for 120 days, one, that's a reflection of the market and what people are willing to pay for it, probably overpriced, but also lets me know that I can go in with a very I can lowball it, right? I don't have to be super competitive with that offer. It's gonna be common, right? You'll talk to an agent and 120 days no action. You make an offer and they're like, "Oh, we just got something else in today. Let me get your highest and best." Right? It's nonsense, but they're it's how you play the game, man. You got to do a little bit of bluffing. Um, but here's what I want you to understand about why this process works and why there are a couple components here. So the first thing I'm going to start with is the max allowable offer formula. This is how I learned the game. This is probably how most of you learned it. So as you know, it's ARV times about 70% minus repairs minus your profit. That tells you how much you should offer on a property. Now, this is what I found over the years, okay? That is a good starting point. I still teach that to my students to this day, but I use that as a baseline because max allowable offer is far more subjective than you've been taught. It's also very much a hypothetical formula. A big part of that comes from what hard money lenders are typically willing to lend on a property to mitigate their risk. So that's kind of where that comes from. But you have to understand that hypothetical best case scenario formula, while it can work, it's often predicated on this idea that all buyers are the same. Now, I use examples of, what if someone's got 500 grand in the bank sitting there in cash versus someone using a hard money loan? They're paying application fees, origination fees, 3 to 4 points, 12, 14% interest. Their spread needs to be a lot larger. Then there's buyer preference. Some people, hey, if I can get 20 grand out of this 6 weeks, I'm all in. Some people, hey, if it's not $50,000 at least, I'm not touching it. Then some people are buying for rental. They want to rent it, for cash flow, passive income for the next 50 years and pass it on to their kids. Some people want to fix and flip. Some people want to fix and flip and do it as nice as possible. Depends on the neighborhood. Some people want to slap a coat of paint on it, go in there. Some people really like an area. I have landlords where they like all their properties within like a 3-mile radius. They're willing to pay a premium. I have international buyers. A lot of these guys just want a piece to park their money and secure U.S. real estate. So all these different reasons, all these guys do not evaluate properties the exact same way. So for you, if you're sticking very firmly and not allowing yourself any flexibility to that formula, you're going to be missing out on a lot of deals. Also, demand. We're completely forgetting about that, right? Demand is going to be different depending on where you are, where your market is, what the demand looks like. I'm in Florida. That may look very different from the demand in certain parts of Idaho or Nebraska. So these are things that you all need to take into account. It might be some rewiring that needs to happen in your head, right? So you can really get this stuff and not stick to this firm, this is what I call like whiteboard training, okay? This stuff looks good on a whiteboard, but when you translate it to the actual business, right? You go to the streets with this, it doesn't always work out that way, okay? On the note of max allowable offer being subjective, repairs are even more subjective. I've had buyers go into a house and some buyers will say, yeah, Mike, it's about a $40,000 job. I've had buyers go into the same house tell me, Mike, this is $80,000, $90,000. And the reality is they're both right, okay? It is their money, it's their risk, it's their investment, it's how they do the work. Some buyers, again, slapping that paint on, sticking a Section 8 tenant in there. Some people fixing it up really nicely. Some people are going to pull permits and do the proper work and go through the city. And some people are going to pull the curtains closed or put trash bag or cardboard up over the windows and do unpermitted work. Some people are going to do the work themselves, their handyman. Some people are going to use subcontractors. Some people are going to use a general contractor. Some people are going to use the cheapest materials, cheap windows. Some people are going to use impact windows. It all makes a difference. And so when you're coming out and you're spending an hour going through, your formulas and doing the price per square foot and determining exactly what the repairs are, a lot of which you don't even really know. One, it's very subjective, but two, a buyer is almost always going. There are exceptions to this rule, especially if you get a independent third party like a contractor to come in and do that for you, and you can produce that report. But for the most part, a buyer is not going to believe you. They're trained to know that wholesalers are trying to make a profit. Wholesalers tend to fudge the numbers and make the property look like the ARV is a lot higher. They make the repairs look a lot lower. They know this. It's an assumption going into the game, so they're not going to take your word for it. An example I throw out there all the time is like, imagine if I was selling you a Rolex, right? And I don't know if eBay really even exists anymore, but let's say it's worth 20K and I'm selling it for 10. You're like, this is a great deal, but I'm going to take it to a third party to just get it authenticated to make sure it's real. And I was like, no, I'm telling you it's real. Just trust me. Random guy on the internet. It's like, no, you wouldn't trust me because I have a vested interest in the sale of this watch. It's the same thing. So if you're going in, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you don't do any due diligence or you don't try your best. But what I'm saying is that what's the word I'm looking for? Not return on investment. It is something limiting. It'll come to me. Diminishing returns, right? If you're putting in too much work into something, you could be making offers during that time, okay? And you're putting in, again, you're gonna put in some work, but if you're doing it too much for everything and it's largely negligible, you're kind of wasting time. That's what I'm trying to say here, okay? One of the next best things about when it comes to running comps and determining property analysis, you always got to stay in tune with your market. Know what's happening. Know what's going on. You should know, are we in a buyer's market right now? Or are we in a seller's market? You should be looking at this data. Everything I do is based on data, okay? I'm not listening to hearsay. I'm not listening to what family says. I'm not looking at media, social media, headlines. I'm digging into the data. I have a video on this. You can go to Redfin. You can go to Realtor.com and look at the number of sales. You can look at the number of houses on the market. That's going to give you that's going to tell you where you are. And then you look at the prices, you look at total prices, you look at medians, you look at averages, you look at heat maps, and then you want to go and look at cash buyers. You can now do that for free using a service like PropWire. You go and look at cash buyers. Where are the majority of people purchasing? Look at that area. Then what other what are those prices, right? You're going to have some outliers, some properties, $1 million here, a property for 80,000 there. But if those outliers, it's 10%. If 80% are buying between 200,000 and 500,000, that's where you need to be. And you need to be aware of what cash buyers, what are investors are purchasing deals for. And so, like for me, for example, I have wholesale things in Miami at 85% of ARV because the demand is very strong. Now, if I made offers at 70%, I probably wouldn't have gotten the contract at all, but that's because I know my market. Now, if you try and take that same formula again, go to like Nebraska, and you're trying to wholesale at 85% ARV, it's probably not going to work for you because that demand is just not there. So that's another thing you need to understand. And I'm at a point where in some of my most popular markets, I can tell you, listen, if you're in Boynton Beach, if you're in Delray Beach, if you're in Lake Worth, and you are east of I-95, and you're between, streets A and K, and you have a concrete block house, and you bring it to me for $300,000, I can sell it. I can sell it the same day. Like, these are the kind of things that you want to be comfortable saying. So you kind of already know what things in that area are going for. And this is not an exercise that takes you a long time, man. You can complete this literally in one day, and it'll save you 6 months of really spinning your wheels. Okay, so now I want to get into the activity really quickly, but I think it's important that you guys really understand this stuff. The next one is probably the most important thing for this formula, and that is this. You are typically trained, as was I, that you use this formula, it's a magic formula, right? You do all the repairs, you do your estimates, and then you have to negotiate with the seller. Once you negotiate with the seller, you guys meet at something that should be a win-win for everybody. You sign the contract, then you find the buyer and you close the property. It's very rare that it works that way. It's very rare that it's that smooth. But the underlying, I guess, idea there is that once you sign a contract, your negotiations are done. And in my experience, that is not true. The vast majority of my negotiations happen after the contract is signed. And that's what makes this strategy work. Okay. Now, if you follow, I don't know, a lot of YouTube channels, if you're ever on Bigger Pockets, God forbid, if you're in a lot of wholesaling groups, you will see people come on there, again, with a lot of virtue signaling, and they'll say, listen, if you don't know how to do your comps, you don't know how to do your numbers, if you make an offer and then you try to renege or you try to renegotiate, like, you're a piece of shit and you should die and you should get out of the business. That's kind of how these guys are, right? But then I want you to think about this, right? What I'm saying, and especially important, because for me, I do all of my wholesaling virtually. So for you to, you're essentially going to this seller, you're putting this in a contract, but this is what it translates to. Okay, you go to the seller, you say, listen, tell me about this house, tell me about the property, tell me about your repairs, tell me about what it needs, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, then you say, okay, based on what you said, I'm comfortable making an offer of $100,000. And at that point, you're also saying, I'm going off your information. So at that point, a seller's not going to be like, well, I wasn't completely honest, right? You're not going to do that, even though they typically, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. They don't disclose everything. Some things they don't even know. But oftentimes they too think their property is worth more than it is and the repairs are less than they are. When you say, okay, I am comfortable sending you a contract for $100,000, then you tell them when you're talking, I'm going to have someone come and do a quick walkthrough just to validate everything you said is correct. Again, they're not going to push back, and to make sure, there's nothing else going on with this property. Cool. So with that said, the contract now has an inspection period. And in that inspection period, it says, buyer has X amount of days to look at the property, to inspect it, and for whatever reason, right? If something's broken, if there's more repairs than I thought, if I found a cheaper property, if I found a better investment, if I don't like the color, if I don't like the neighbors, if the neighbor's dog is annoying, I have the right to renegotiate this contract, or I have the right to cancel. Do you agree with that? And the seller, as a functional, human, consenting adult, says, yes, I do. So now when you go back and you say, let's say you did offer too high, right? If you did offer too high and you come back, first of all, you're not going to just come back and you're pulling numbers out of thin air to lowball these guys. Typically, when you send it to your buyers, you're going to get buyer feedback. And the marketplace is going to be what tells you what buyers are willing to pay. So then if you need to come back to to the seller and say, hey man, I know we said 100,000. As you know, Tim came by the other day, walked the property, couple things that concern us, couple things it's going to take a little bit more work than we thought. So I know we agreed on 100, but at this point, we'd still like to do the deal. Remember, if you could go back and they could always say no, right? But the point I'm making here is that you kind of let them know that even if they go with another buyer, they might just be in the same place all over again. Another buyer might offer them 110, do the inspection, and then they come back with the same findings, maybe even lower findings. This goes into the psychology thing I'm going to talk about in just a second. Now we'll get started. So now you have them in this place where it's like, okay, well, do I just take the sure thing? Or especially with all the uncertainty in the world today happening with the economy and all that stuff, like, people don't know, right? So do you take the sure thing and go with you? Yeah, and that's completely fine. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's far easier to negotiate once you're already in contract because you have that commitment, that level of commitment. So when I say that, another example is like, if I want to get a property under contract and I want to do a 14-day inspection period, the seller is not committed to me. So they'll say 14 days. You don't need 14 days, man. Like, I can't do that. I don't want to tie the property up. So then you don't get the contract at all. So let's say I go in and I say, okay, let's do 7 days. Now, maybe around the 5th day, if I'm getting some activity and people are calling me and asking me about it, but they haven't been able to see it, then I'm like, okay, I still think I can sell this thing. And you go back to that seller and say, hey, listen, and there's a couple different things you can say. You could put it on yourself, or you could even be more transparent. Hey, this is probably not going to work for me, but check this out. I do some wholesaling. I have these buyers. This is stuff your realtor doesn't have access to. The price that we agreed on, that's still the price that you're going to get. So, if you give me a couple more days, it's basically free marketing for you. And during that time, you can still take backup offers, right? So you're not tying anything up. But the optics of it in the seller's head, it's not like in the beginning you wanted 14 days, but now you're like halfway through the process, they're ready to close, and you're like, what's another 5 days, right? And so there are things you do during your inspection period why this works. So the point is, you don't need to have all your terms and all your pricing and all that stuff perfect, because you have this time period where you can renegotiate, and the renegotiation is not just bullshit, right? It's based on what buyers are telling you, what feedback is coming back from your buyers, and what's actually happening in the property on a much deeper level than you're going to know, and also what your buyers are telling you they're willing to pay. So now you know you have it sold, right? So in that example, if I'm trying to sell a property at 100, the buyer comes back, he says, okay, I can do 90. I'll typically say, well, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I'll say, well, why is that? And the buyer will then start to kind of itemize these things for me, or sometimes they'll produce an inspection report. And I'll say, listen, I'm not promising you I can do this. What's your best number? And I'll say, I'll go back and I'll fight for you. I'll try my best to get this property. If I can't get it for you at this price, I got you. You'll be the first person I call in the next one. When I'm doing that, I'm also building massive value, massive rapport, and building relationships with my buyers. And I'm also showing my worth, right? So now they don't see me as just this wholesaler. Hey, this guy didn't do any work. I could do that. It's just, tacking on his fee to a property I could have gotten. You're like, no, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to go back. I'm going to be the mediator. I'm going to talk to these people. I'm going to make sure that we get you this deal. And that's what gets buyers coming back to you. So I'm also showing my value and forming relationships at the same time. Now, one other point is that another reason why I told you I talk you guys about psychology really quickly. Why sellers are more likely to um, uh, agree to different contingencies or additional addendums or changes or price cuts during the inspection period, largely rooted in psychology. First, they've already committed to you. That means they have made a decision. Now, as human beings, when we make decisions, we have a cognitive bias, an ego bias, if you will, that basically tells us we're right. Now, if we go back on that, hey, man, I chose the wrong guy to sell my house to, typically, largely on a subconscious level, we don't like to tell ourselves we made a bad decision. That's number one. Number two, this person you're dealing with, they're a motivated seller. That means they have a pain point. Something in their life is hurting. And when they sign the contract, despite the property not being sold yet, they feel like this sense of relief. Oh my gosh, this property was such a headache. It's done. And so even though it's not done, they're already in that mentality like this is already done. And the third piece I kind of touched on already, but that is a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. Meaning, if you are there and you tell them, listen, we need a slight price reduction, but you explained to me that it was important for you to get out of here by, I don't know, the 31st, and so we can still close and get you out of here in the next week. It's just you just got to sign this quick addendum, site price. But remember, you'll get paid out in cash. We take everything as is, no repairs, et cetera. Right? You're doing your USP thing, your unique selling proposition, and then based on that, a lot of times I say, man, I really wanted the higher price, but I have something firm in front of me. I have something that I'm guaranteed. Do I take it or do I go back to the unknown? Right? What's going to happen? Will I have to list it? Will I have to fix it up? Will I have to put it with a realtor? Will it take 6 months to sell? Is the economy going to crash? Is someone going to make me a better offer, tie me up even longer? Someone going to make me an equal offer, come back, find the repairs even more than this guy says? There's so many unknowns. Let me just take the short thing. And so that's why you can renegotiate during your inspection period. And that's probably the most important piece of why this works. I know that was long-winded, but it's very, very important to understand. If anyone has any questions about that, I'm going to go ahead and check the chat in just a minute. And then as I keep saying, last thing. But this is kind of really last thing. Okay, so I want you guys to understand that this is more of an art than it is a science. It's not these strict formulas. There's wiggle room. It's where just play around this stuff. There are negotiations that you can do through as you're going through the process. You're solving problems. You're massaging the deal to make sure that this stuff can work out for all parties that are involved. And Again, it's your best estimate, right? And so sometimes that means people will say to me, well, Mike, what if there are no comps? Well, first off, if there's no comps, there's no activity, you really got to check that area, because it might just mean that it's not an in-demand area. I've had students bring me deals that are cheap on paper, but they're in the middle of swamp. No one's going to rent there. Nothing's around there. No one's flipping there. So despite the low price point, there's just nothing there, and nobody wants that because they can't make money there. So that's one point. But number two, you just use the next best thing. Ideally, we want a property within a quarter mile. No properties a quarter mile? Good. Go to half a mile. Nothing half a mile, go to 3/4 miles. Other 3/4, go to a mile. We want a property that sold last month. There's nothing here, go back 3 months. Nothing here, go back 6 months. And you just take your best guess. Sometimes you'll have to look at, okay, well, maybe I go to the property appraiser site and this comp's really old, but I can make some estimates, some guesstimates, and come up with something. Or maybe it's on listed and you're like, man, I really can't find anything. Hey, always make the offer anyway. Just, then divert to your formula, give them 70% off the asking price. And at this point, it's about starting that conversation. Okay. So today, we may run into, I'll show you how I'm doing this, guys. My students who are here already know this. Okay. So, I have not looked at any of the properties that we're going to do today. I want to do this live. I want to do this with you. Now, we may find some properties that fit that same mold I just talked about, right? That like, there's no comps around. There's nothing to do with this. I'm just going to say, hey, man, this is the best guess that I'm coming up with, right? And I want to walk you through my thought process of like, where right there I should be or whatever. So I don't know what's going to happen. And then at the same time, if you guys just want to search a random place and just do it, let me know in the chat. If you have a property you want me to comp and give you my thoughts, we can do that. I would caution you though, because if it's a deal and you don't have it under contract, this is not a private group, it's on YouTube. So someone might just jump in, snatch that property address, call those people, shit, maybe tonight, and then you're kind of gonna be screwed. So I wouldn't necessarily do that one. But hey, if you guys want to do it, I'm fine with that. But that's all to show you, like, this is just gonna be, I don't know what to expect, right? And that's kind of what happens in this business. So the way I do this, and one of the exercises that I have my students do, is I have them go to Zillow and set up a dedicated inbox for on-market leads that could potentially be wholesale deals. Now, typically in off-market, we're dealing with motivation. We're dealing with life situations. People are getting divorced. They're getting evicted. Someone passed away. They inherited a property. Sometimes you can see that on-market, but not always. When you're looking on-market, typically we tend to look for signs of physically distressed properties. So that's what I'm just using as a baseline for the purpose of today's exercise. We're going to be looking at some properties that are online. But anyway, I have them, just create a free Zillow account, and then you set up automated searches. So in order to determine if something is physically distressed, obviously we have pictures, but we want that delivered to an inbox. Again, it shouldn't be mixed in with your personal, your business. You want it dedicated inbox. And so we're going to use the keyword search functionality to create all these different searches for different areas with keywords that are indicative of a property that may be distressed. That's going to be stuff like fire damage, roof damage, leaks, Chinese drywall, motivated, cash, inherited, investor friendly. I actually have a PDF with a list of probably over 100 terms, and it's not even an exhaustive list. But if anybody wants that, just drop your email in the chat or shoot me a DM on Instagram, Mike Hill TWT, or send me an email, mike@wholesalingwithmike.com, and I will send that over to you. So what I have is I have my version, this inbox pulled up, and this is an exercise I have them do every morning. I'm like, listen, before you start your day, you have your get up, do your little morning routine, and then just scan this inbox, right? And it's not always going to be deals, but you're going to get stuff sent to you every single day matching the search criteria. There's an option on Zillow where you just say, hey, every time something comes onto this website with that keyword, send it to my email, right? And so that's one way that you can find deals for free and have them delivered to your inbox for free. And then, you call these folks and you talk to them about their property and stuff, okay? So let's see what this looks like. All right, so this is like my inbox here. And, these are different criteria I have, right? So this one, for example, St. Lucie County, Florida, and it has the keyword is TLC. That's realtor talk for like, man, this place is really jacked up, right? And so you'll see, like, every day I just come in here. And again, I haven't looked at this all week in preparation for this call. So we should have some stuff that we can look at. And there's certain things I look at, right? So one good thing, anytime you see price cuts, that's usually good, a good sign that, people might be a little bit motivated. And certain things that I kind of look for, right? So, one, this kind of goes back to my market. So, I am looking primarily my buyers, single family homes, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, typically, I'm sorry, 3 twos, typically ideal. I can do 2 1s. I don't like to be in war zones, although I've done those deals. I don't love, like, my ideal stuff is not like townhouses, condos, luxury areas, gated communities, even though I've flipped houses in all of those places. But something like this, right? Like, kind of a starter family home. They tell you in marketing you should always have an archetype of the people that you're talking to, and so that's essentially what I have for my cash buyers, right? So we're in Florida, right? We don't like the wood frame so much, so CBS, and usually, not always, I'm looking for signs of distress, right? So something like this here, well, I'm actually gonna glance at it because there's a price cut of $20,000. But at the same time, I like to see stuff, maybe a little older. You see, especially in certain areas, you'll see like houses that are pink. They've got bars all over the windows. Maybe they've got some patchwork on the roof, or the yard is really unkept, things like that. So this is the first part of this process, is telling you what to look for very quickly. And you can do this obviously anywhere online, and you can do it even, I don't know, driving for dollars. Now, something like this, I'm not going to click on this because it's probably not a motivated seller. At the same time, things like that can be rehabbers. So you can do some research, some other tools you can use, especially if you have something like Privy. And if this was jacked up and it got fixed up and someone came and put their work into it, that person you can usually get in contact with, and they make a very good cash buyer. So there's always good information here, right? But stuff like this, man, this is stuff that I love and I love to play with. So we can go through, right? Something like this, I'm probably not going to click on. This looks, well manicured. And then also, when you kind of know your area, certain things are going to stick out to you. That's high, that's low, right? Yeah, I see 199. That looks good. Port St. Lucie. Okay, cool. This, this kind of stuff, not clicking on. Not clicking on. Let's see. Well, we got a price cut, 10K, right? So those are initially some of the things that I like to look at. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pick one. Before I do that, just so you guys know, when we talk about repairs, right? I kind of went on a rant on that, right? But I have like tools, right? Like this is one tool for my students. You just come in and it's a lot more detail, right? So what does a bathroom need? What's the square footage? You just rip this off the property appraiser site. You got cost per unit, price per square foot, and you can go through, rooms and the kitchen and all the materials. And if you do this, and sometimes it's worth it, especially if you're like a little bit deeper in the um conversation or transaction, whatever, then it is worth it to do that. But for quick comp method, by the time you do this for one property, I'm gonna probably put under contract before you, or I'm gonna make offers on 20 properties while you're working on this one sheet, right? So tools like this necessary, like they still work, but it's not necessarily quick comp. Now for quick comp also, I do have like some cheat sheets and things like this. So for example, this is something, if you guys want this stuff, again, DM me, email me. That's the best way. I'll just send them to you. But referral stuff like this, where you can look at, okay, what does light repair mean, right? Primarily cosmetic, what's moderate, what's heavy, and then based on the square footage, it'll give you an estimate that you can kind of plug into that formula, max level R for formula as your baseline, right? And then just some average costs and a range and stuff like that, right? So we do have some cheat sheets that we can work with. So in terms of doing this stuff for free, I'm checking the time here just to make sure we're good. Hey, real quick, Chuck says the sound is low. Is anybody else having that issue? Please let me know. I can turn it up a little bit. Sometimes we get like some feedback. I'll also move it a little bit closer and see if that helps at all. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna pull up a new browser window. And what I recommend is that you have like just in your you call this bookmarks bar or whatever, just have a tab. And I want to encourage you guys, just save all these, right? And this is a fast, quick way to do this. So really quickly, I'm going to take the URLs of all this stuff. And again, I want to make my trainings like actionable. So I'm going to just drop that in the chat one by one. Okay. This site here. And open all of them up just like I have in one window. And then just save Okay, I'll turn the volume up. Uh, and just save all these bookmarks. These are all going to be free, right? Because that is the focus of our training today. Okay, so I'll give you guys a minute to do that. I'm going to turn the volume up. You guys let me know what it sounds like. Check on my end, make sure we're not like up in the red. See, testing. It seems okay. I'm not getting any crackling. If you guys are, let me know and I will adjust. Okay, so sound check, better, worse, same. Please let me know, and also do this in the meantime. And while you're doing that, it's gonna open this up and pick like a random property. Let's start with the first one, so we're kind of going in order. All right, so you know what? Let's just click on the first one. Well, so the first thing I do, right, is I want to look at the pictures. That's where I'm going to start, okay? So something like this, it should take you like a couple minutes. I'm going to show you things that I kind of look for. Okay, we got a carport. Okay, so it's not bad, right? Probably a good rental. You know, this like appliance a little bit dated, but nothing super concerning here. Yeah, slightly dated, but not even that much. You know, looks pretty nice, right? A little bit of work to be done here, but nothing concerning. So this is something like if you brought this to me, I wouldn't say, man, this is like a super hot deal, but I would call on it. Other things you want to look for, right? You want to look for things like the ducts, make sure that it has central AC. You'll still call, and when you talk to them, confirm. Sorry, that you know the central AC is there and that it is working. Wonder sometimes you see stuff like this on the floor, and then it's like you walk in, there's like a huge hole in the roof that they don't put in pictures, but it doesn't look like the case. Okay, so like this looks like a decent house, might be good for like a rental, nothing too crazy. These drop ceilings, well, it's in a laundry room, so not a huge deal, but a lot of investors will get rid of those. Those are like kind of old. But so far, not something I'm like super enthusiastic about, but I'd say, yeah, okay. For the sake of the exercise, let's take a look, okay? Whoops. Open that back up. Hey, where did that go? Here we go. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I want to look at the comments, right? So excellent investment area. Okay, cool. Investment opportunity, sorry. Why area, etc. Okay, so only 18 days on Zillow. So that's going to tell me I do need to be a little bit more competitive with my offer. Remember, you need to get that control first, especially if you're doing on market. So what that means, if your max allowable offer formula puts you, let's see what they're asking, $399. So if it puts you at like 300, you're not going to make an offer of 300 because even though you're like, man, I feel like that's the wholesale price, it's very unlikely it's going to get accepted, especially 18 days in. And what will also happen is that this realtor will now, anytime you contact them, anytime they see your email, they're probably just going to add it to junk, your spam, your blackballed. Whereas even if you offer a little bit high, then you can try and walk it back during your inspection period, and or you know, you make a good offer and then you can talk to the realtor and then you can explain and qualify to them, well, listen, I made this offer, I know it's a little bit low, I'm not talking 300, it would have to be higher than that, but and this is without me running comps, so I'm saying, right? So just like if the number was 300, it's just too far off. It's just too far off, right? But let's say you came in 350. Hey, listen, I know this is low. Understand, I'm an investor. I got to make a profit, right? I got holding costs, closing costs. I got to pay commissions when I flip this thing. And then also, these are the comps that I found. These are the comps that I'm looking at. So they can see you made an informed decision. And when you're showing them the comps, obviously, you just show them the lower ones, right? To justify, you know, you're taking on risk. So you have to be very conservative with your numbers. And when you do that, even if you don't get this one, you tell them what you're looking for. You state your case. You show them how it's easy to work with you, how you'll buy multiple properties from them. And then based on that information, oftentimes that's where they're going to hit you up for future, where you form relationships, and then it'll start hitting you up for like future deals. Okay. Um, so from here, nothing that's saying like super motivated. And then this estimate, we'll see that they're basically asking now. As a lot of you guys know, this estimate is not something you can rely on. It's wrong most of the time, but it is something that I'll look at and just kind of keep in the back of my head as we're putting together like the pieces to this puzzle. I'll see if I find other information that kind of justifies that. But it's something I glance at. I glance at it really quickly. Okay. So as far as Zillow, we can scroll down. Right, we understand a little bit about the property. You can see obviously things like square footage, and if the construction type. Man, I can't talk now. And then the other thing that we can do here, you can look at any price changes. So this is important just to understand kind of the story. This is especially important when we're using on market, because these are easy to look at because they're in my inbox. But oftentimes, when you are making an offer on an all market property, this is important to kind of know the story, right? So what's happened? This is, even though it said 18 days, let's see, you can try to discern, is this the same owner, right? So, yeah, we don't see any sales here, right? So they came in trying to sell at 430 in March, 420, 415, switched up the realtor, 415. Now we're down to 399. Okay. So that's just something, again, just tuck it in the back of your mind. We're not doing anything with that just yet. And then we want to look at the actual sales prices, right? So once you're here, you're going to get this little grid, and you'll see you can mouse over. Oops, I clicked that. Right, you can mouse over these things, or you can come down and it'll show you. Oh, that's another thing. Like, if you can't find any comps, sometimes you can look at like rental estimates. You can look at like nearby homes, things like that. Again, not the proper way to like comp per se, but just to get an idea, right? So for sale, for sale, for sale. So like, some of this is common sense, man. Like, listen, if I'm an investor, why am I paying 400 even if the house is a little bit nicer? Remember, I'm not living here, right? So I'm an investor when I can get stuff nearby for 375, right? So that's just something that should stick out to you, right? These are things that you should pick up on very, very quickly. So you look at like things for sale just to get a kind of a picture there, and then here you'll have these sold, right? And the other thing too is like, remember when I told you guys about how cash buyers really run comps? So for example, they want to make sure that they're in the same subdivision. When you run your comps like very like detailed methodically, you want to do that as well. You want to be in the same subdivision. Proximity is not everything. Sometimes you can have properties that are like literally 0.4 miles away, but the subdivision is different and the neighborhoods are completely different. Now, if you're just trying to kind of visually gauge some of this stuff, oftentimes if you have things like big streets, major streets, railroads, highways, bodies of water, train tracks, things like that, those are often some of the things that will separate like different subdivisions and different neighborhoods. So that's also something that you kind of want to you kind of want to keep in mind. Okay, but here we're pretty close here. There's no major roads, and I got a 340 here, and then you can come down and see beds, bath, and things like that. But so far, if I had to just glance at this, I'm gonna say, man, this thing's probably not a deal. It looks overpriced to me. But then that's where we do this. We come up, right? We're just gonna copy the address, and then we're gonna go back to our browser, and that would have already been there. Here, this is a site I like to use, Home Value. Let's paste. Okay, we're searching there. Same thing here. And also, guys, you don't always have to do this with all of these things. One thing is that people think the more comps I can find, the better. And usually it's going to be quality over quantity. Meaning, if I'm comping a house and I have one comp that's right next door and it's the exact same build, it sold recently, condition, all that stuff is relatively the same. And this is easier, especially in communities where you had a builder come in and they basically put cookie cutter houses down next to each other. But let's say that sold, right? Sold last month. That's going to weigh far heavier than, let's say, if I find 10, maybe 20 comps, but they're all like, 0.8 miles away. And construction type can be different stuff. So sometimes, even if you're sending it to your buyers or you're looking for yourself, your own knowledge, even though it's just one, if it's right there, oftentimes that one is going to hold more weight, be more important to your comping process than, what I'm saying is you don't necessarily take that, throw it in with the other 8, and then average it all out. It's not how you want to do that. Okay. Okay, so let's run this. Come over to prop wire. We'll drop that in there. And we can go back, okay? So this site, right? Now you're seeing if a lot of the data, right, even as it pertains like Zestimate, all looks the same, it's probably close to that number. Now, again, I don't like these automated home values. They're oftentimes very, very wrong. It's computer generated. It's the algorithms. Oftentimes you can't they don't even discern between like property types. You might be comparing a single family house to the condo across the street. That happens. And that's how some of these values get way either inflated or just completely wrong. But at the same time, especially if I see patterns in a lot of these sites, keep it tucked in the back of my head, right? Just to give myself an idea. Okay, so what we're gonna do is here. Remember what I told you guys, like proximity isn't necessarily everything. So sometimes you might have, the number one is here, right? Outside of this big road, right? And the number two might be here, but well, in that case, it is proximity. But hopefully, you guys kind of see what I'm saying. It's not always proximity, and you would see like something like this separated by I-95, right? And here now, I want to say, is that Dixie? I don't know. But anyway, no, that's not. We're still in the same neighborhoodish, right? So next thing I want to do is come on down, right? And you'll see, right? This is on 16th lane, right? So 3-1. So certain assumptions you make, right? So 3-2s, these all have an extra bathroom. So you would anticipate that's probably going to be worth a little bit more than your subject property. Now, I'm seeing these are all built around the same year, so it's going to be very good comps, right? This one's going to be weighted a little bit higher. That's we looked at the visual, right? They're all kind of in that same neighborhood. So here is much closer. This is much closer, right? And here, they're all 3-2s. They're built around the same year. I got 350, 350. So already these guys are priced at 400. This is telling me that 4-4, right? And then, oops. Like actually, aside from these two, now you could say, well, Mike, your house subject house might be a lot nicer, blah blah blah. Well, first of all, it's not. But that just tells me this is overpriced. It's not something I'm even gonna call on because if I'm being semi-conservative, let's just say from here I rip the number 350, right? And then remember, I still do use the ARV as a baseline, although I know this area is still a good area, good for rentals. You can also use the 1% rule, which basically says you take remember, these are general, is facts, right? There's no hard rule like that. But a general rule, if someone's renting for rental, the 1% rule says that the max you would pay for a property is 100 times the rent. So if a property is renting for $2,500 a month, the max according to that rule, and again, this is sensitive type of neighborhood you're in, would be about $250,000. So that's another way that you could look at this, right? But listen, if I'm saying 350 and I'm starting my baseline times 0.7, I'm at 250. I'm off by $150,000. So that for me, to know if I would even make an offer on this, I just wouldn't. Okay. But hopefully you guys are seeing like some of the patterns, and like at this point, I wouldn't even keep going. But for the sake of the exercise, like you're probably gonna find the same stuff, right? These look, we got some couple higher ones here, but I would imagine like if I looked at the map, they're gonna be further out. Where's my minus sign? Mm-mm-mm. I'd zoom out the whole page. Anyway, like I said, these are see they're a little bit further out there. You zoom back in so you guys can see. Okay. Sorry, I forgot to check in on how the voice stuff was going. All right, let me make sure we're all connected here, and I'm gonna turn that up a little bit more, and you guys let me know. Maybe I just gotta stay a little bit closer and see if we are good. Mic check, mic check. Okay, looks like we should be okay. I'm talking this way, so, and this mic is oriented straight, so hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay, next we'll do the same thing. We're on realtor.com again. This is how you can do it using free sites. Okay, so we're here. Sometimes, even though a lot of stuff comes from the same MLS, you'll have more pictures on certain sites than others. So make sure you always look at go through that really quickly. One thing I like on this site, Is this home value? These numbers here, again, not to be relied on, right? You need to look at still at an individual level, but just very fast paced. But in my experience, most of the time, again, you glance at them, but these numbers tend to be better than the estimates, right? Because these are three independent companies that do the valuation there, right? And the last one you can look at, and you don't need to go through all of these. Sometimes PropWire has some really, really good stuff here. So you go to comps. One thing that I like to do when we do that is go to more. And so, it starts, we got sold in last year within a half a mile. That's usually like the default. And then for year built, I like to do that within 10 years. You can back it out a little bit, but then you take it with a grain of salt. You're not going to be exact, but, we're here and I'm basically seeing like all the same stuff. So nothing in this is screaming like, again, doesn't even have to scream deal, but it has to scream ballpark to me, okay? Guys, let me know about the sound, please. And so yeah, something like this, not even gonna be a deal for me. We do have some outliers here, and you can always click and go a little bit deeper. But again, for the sake of quick comp, without even looking at the repairs, which again, you guys do have that cheat sheet there, it's gonna be 400 times 0.7. I'm off by $150,000. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of keep us in the safe space of right here because of the crackling. I turned the mic up, but then I got closer. So let me try to find I'm looking at the equalizer, ideal level where we're balanced. I think that one should be, oh, you know what? I think I see what's going on here. Okay, all right. That's, sorry, no, okay, now you're crackling. Okay, I got it. I had the physical mic settings on, as well as like the limiter on the computer. And I think we should be good. That was a little crackling. Right about here. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to fix that. Okay, that should be a little bit better without much like crackling and stuff. Um, but thank you for the feedback and let me know as we go along. Okay, so next let's go back and let's see if we can do this. And again, we're looking at that a little bit slowly so you guys have an idea of the things that you want to be looking for. But now we can start going a little bit faster. And this is how, again, if you guys are doing this like on market, particularly as part of your morning routine to look for if there's any potential, this is how fast you should look at these things. Sometimes you can look at just the pictures and be like, no deal here. Okay. Where's my mailbox? Okay, let's see. Let's check out this next one. Okay. See, something like this, it's just been recently redone. I have no interest in this. Newer AC, newer roof. This could probably newly remodeled. This could be a great way to find the buyer. They're going to be a cash buyer for you in this area. Again, this is the price point in this area. Very, very good price point. This is good for flippers. Usually selling to like a first time home buyer. Again, we're thinking archetypes. So this is like white picket fence neighborhood. There's schools around. There's kids out playing. Newlywed parents, or newlywed folks with their first kid, things like that. So something like this, in terms of wholesaling, I'm not even gonna really look at it, right? Just off the pictures, and that's gonna save you a lot of time. Okay. This might be old. I can't really tell. And this like Florida room. Let's see. Nothing here that screams. And this is probably going to be a community that is not ideal. Where is that? Fort Lauderdale. Okay. And again, we could comp stuff like this just for the exercise. But since we're doing the exercise anyway, let's find something that like could be a wholesale deal because that's not interesting to me. Okay. This pretty good condition. Not to say that that necessarily means it can't be a deal. But again, if I'm just playing a numbers game and I'm like, listen, I got 30 minutes before I leave the house. Let me find something I could call on. This is how fast I want to be going through this stuff, okay? And remember, sometimes this is part of the game, right? It takes time. People say, well, why wouldn't buyers just do that themselves? Because it takes some time. But when you break it down by hour, if you spend an hour doing this, you're going to find something, okay? And, okay, see, things like this would not be strike me as a deal. right? Everything looks nice and new, like it's been rehab. Like someone might be using this for like an Airbnb in this area. Um, but just things just to get you visually looking at things like, AC unit. Now, I'm not saying that means a deal, but like a wall unit. When you are looking at properties that could be a deal, those are some of the things that should start to like stick out, stand out for you. Okay. So just to like tune your mind to that. But that's not something I want to look at. And this is a big part of what you can do. This, man, I flipped a property that looks exactly like, but it wasn't Lauderhill, it was Miami Gardens. Okay, but look, we're saying what's that? The iron from the water on the wall. These are the old school windows. All right, so that's kind of outdated. Small place, maybe good for like a rental. So again, nothing here to me is screaming like wholesale deal, but sake of the exercise, if we wanted to, like we would look at this, we'd see what they're saying about it. No HOA, 5-year-old roof, that's pretty good. So ideally, what we'd be looking for is stuff like investors, and I'll tell you the reason that this came up in my inbox, because one of my keywords is roof. The reason it's roof is because I want to see all properties that say roof damage, roof needs work, roof needs replaced. Every now and again, you're gonna get stuff that says 5-year-old roof, new roof. So that's like why you look at it very, very quickly. Okay. But yeah, something like this, you want to get the what do you think it's worth? Okay, glance at this estimate. Boom, boom, boom. Roll down. We want to look at the sales, right? Because even though the Zestimate, guys, is oftentimes wrong, the sales are still sales, right? So that's good. For sale, you can just kind of take that into account. Again, just info to tuck in the back of your head, because we're not just looking at exact max offer price. We're looking at what is a buyer going to look at here. When they go and look at comps and they see stuff for sale cheaper than what you're trying to wholesale at, just looking at it, like that's got to like scream at you a little bit. So again, this, just looking at the pictures, I saw nothing that's going to tell me this is a deal. But like for the sake of, going through the process, that's why I'm saying you would scroll down, look at all the sales here, right? So this one, obviously larger lot, looks like a lot, corner lot, a lot bigger house, right? So that makes sense why that price is a little bit higher. And they're at 415. This one 225. So we got, what's that say? This one's probably like a little bit of an outlier. You can always click if you want to really find out what the deal is. But if you're looking at it again, real quick comp, this is you got 4 and then 2. So this for me would require like a little bit more investigation, right? About 4 and 225, and that's why I might go and dump the address. A quick copy paste into some of these other sites, right? And then after this, I'm gonna try and find one that's like actually looks like a wholesale deal, so I can tell you guys kind of like how I would what would stand out to me and kind of what I would offer on it, and show you how to do that very quickly. Because remember, sometimes you want to be able to have your browser open when you're on the phone and be able to talk to someone, and then know if you're in that same that ballpark like we talked about earlier. Okay. Again, look, we're not. Sometimes what I was saying before, like we're 4 and 6. Sometimes they'll be on this side, and despite being close with these major intersections, a lot of times these neighborhoods are very, very different. So that was just another thing I was pointing out to you guys. So subject property is 3-1. This one's a little bigger, 4-2. So now that's where, remember where we saw it visually on Zillow, where I was like, man, those houses across the street are a lot more. That that could be one of the reasons why. Additional bedroom, additional bathroom. That makes sense. A little bit more living area, but nothing too crazy. Okay. And then remember, even proximity wise, since they are within here, we can kind of look at all these. So we'll look at the closest ones first. 3-2, about 389. So obviously not a deal, but the comps are all pretty close here, right? Where you can kind of make some assumptions. So we're at 350, 370, 380, 380. Yeah, so you're in the 350 to 380 range. These are larger. These have an additional bathroom. So you're going to be on the lower end of that, right? So which one was 350? That's funny. I mean, that happens sometimes too. Like this one's bigger, right? And it's still sold for less. And that's where you could go in if you really want to, you can do research on that. But again, we're just generalizing here, right? So if I had to like snapshot and look at this and be a little bit conservative, I'd be like, yeah, it's probably worth like 350. Again, not the proper comping way, but like this one's not gonna be a deal. So we don't need to go too deep on that. We look at this one already. Yeah, I said 350. You're at 290 and 391. So well, 300 and 400. So 350. It's kind of about where we are. But just to be clear, right now, I'm just like giving you ideas of what it's worth. Um, so that's just to know if it's kind of worth pursuing. And then we will find one on here. We got some time here. So I'll tell you, like, if I were on the phone with an agent or if I were on the phone with a seller, this is kind of what I would offer. But remember, also for you guys, like that, it's not like you call them and say, hey man, I want to offer 350. With motivated sellers, direct to owner, you need to be talking to them. You need to use my scripts. You need to be anticipate, prepare for those objections, prepare for them to say to you, well, you called me, you make me an offer. Know how to respond to that. Pull out the pain points, let them give you a price first. And then even when you are dealing with these realtors, again, you'll have to make sure that, if you're too far off, it just doesn't make, even if the numbers with the formula stuff makes sense, it's just not going to make sense if this guy's asking 395 and I want to be at 250. It's just going to be a waste of your time, right? But also, even though you do have to submit your offer to the realtor, right, meaning they're not going to give you the price first, a lot of times if you build rapport and you talk to them, you're fishing for intel, and you could just say, listen man, how fast are these guys trying to leave? Okay, what's the situation? Maybe they're tenants, something like that. Is it problematic properties? What you're trying to find out? Okay, now if I'm paying all cash and if I'm an investor, right? You explain yourself. So I'm not gonna be living in here, right? I need to make a profit on this, and I have all this risk and expenses, etc. But if I come in and pay cash, if I take it as is, if we can sign a contract today, and I can get you out of here in 2 weeks, based on your conversation with the seller, where do you think they're realistically, man? Like, if we want to get this done, like, where do you think they're gonna be? And that's how you can fish for information. And then you take that based on like some of this quick comp stuff, and then you can kind of put the offer in there. Okay. But that's going to allow you to make, remember, we're playing a volume game. So it's going to make you able to make offers a lot faster. And when you have that inspection point, then during your inspection period, then you can go in and refine it. Okay. So where was I? Yeah. So we're looking, and obviously stuff like this. This is not a comp, right? The $8 million thing. But yeah, all kind of in that range we talked about. Okay, I'm gonna find one that's like looks like it has potential. And some of these still could. I'm gonna show you guys like a nice little hoarder house or something. Something like this, little day. See, stuff like this, like you could call on, and it's not bad, but that's where you'd kind of find out the story, right? And so you see got linoleum floors, I think, and a little bit dated stuff. Some areas a little junky, it's a little dirty. All right. Okay, let's go back to my inbox, see if we see anything really interesting. And actually, what I will do is I'm going to search by some of the keywords. So, for example, one of my keywords is like mold, right? Mold. But again, some of these are going to come in and be like, free of mold. We just did mold remediation, stuff like that. So that happens too. And I want to get you guys to one where you could be like, okay, that's what I would offer. That's high. That's high. All right, so remember, I'm going through my inbox, and this is a process that should take you 5-10 minutes every morning. If you do this, it'll be good practice for doing your comps. You can get faster when you're on the phone, but also this is telling you to look out for stuff. Also, the other thing, when you're talking to people off market, here it's nice because we can look at pictures, but don't be afraid to talk to them about the condition. Ask them for pictures. Some people are like, well, man, no one's going to go around your house taking pictures. Not the average person who wants to sell. Someone who is motivated, they'll be more than happy to do that. Just snap a couple shots on their phone and then they will send it to you. And while you might be thinking, oh, they're going to think I'm annoying, it's actually going to build your credibility because you're not the person just, making them a completely blind offer. People are not stupid. People are very sensitive to like scams. Their red flags go up. So when you ask for that stuff, not only does it help you make a more educated, like better decision, because again, we don't need to, for quick comp and kind of throw out these offers and starting this conversation, we don't need to necessarily go by square footage, although really you can if you go to like property appraiser site. But just to understand if you guys, again, in that same ballpark, because they should be giving you the price first anyway. um it gives you an idea of what the condition of the property is like, and it's not a pain, because when you ask for those things, um you come off as more credible. Okay. All right, this might be a little bit more what we're talking about here, right? So now it's only got 4 photos. We may not even get an interior photo, but guys, this is what I'm talking about, making assumptions, right? If you see the outside of a property that looks like this, you can anticipate that the inside's probably going to be pretty jacked up. Okay, so you can see, the windows, bars on the windows, all this stuff. I'm going to guess that it does not have central air. Um, there's no AC in here, so that's probably going to be a full gut job. We're at 723 square feet, so even if we do use that, it's going to be heavy. It could be like a $60,000 job. And keep that in the back of our heads. Now, if we plug that into our formula, let's see, whatever ARV is times 70 minus 60,000 minus 10,000 on something like this, you might come up with a number. We'll do it together in a minute, but it might be like 20,000. Okay. You can't go in and make a crazy offer like that. They're not going to take it. But what you can do is raise it up a little bit higher, knowing damn well that this thing is going to be jacked up when you get in there. Send it to your investors. Your investors are going to say, I'll go look at it, but probably not. They'll go in. You don't have to go there, right? They can even just look at this property, look in the window, see what's going on. And they'll say, Mike, that shit, you must be out of your mind. That's crazy. And then this is why you also follow up with your buyers, right? And also that once you have that reputation, like my buyers all know, like they're obviously some buyers will screw you, but the people that you, or try to like nickel and dime you, but the people that you know and you do business with, they're going to have conversations with you, right? And you're gonna let them know, like, over time, right, that I'll work with you, right? You be honest with me. You send me stuff. I'm gonna go back. I'll fight. I'll negotiate. I'll do all this kind of stuff. Okay, so this would be, and listen, also the other thing, guys, is like, just because something's completely jacked up does not always make it a deal. Sometimes that's worth the amount of damage can make it not worth it. It could be a tear down. It could be too much headache. They might have to go, get all new blueprints from the city. So, I like stuff that's jacked up, but just keep in the back of your mind, like when just because something's really messed up does not make it a deal. But in general, the uglier something is, usually the more money there is to be made in there. Okay. Whoops. Hopefully we're doing good on this sound thing, guys. If you have any more issues, let me know. All right. Where were we? Okay, so now, we got some pictures. We can't even see inside, but we have an idea of what's going on here. This is interesting. Like a lot of times when you see, when a house looks like this, it's concrete block. Like the way this is coming out here, I wonder if they did the stucco like on the wood, but this is it's on a concrete block, so it's still definitely doable. But that stuff you can find on the property appraiser site, and oftentimes it's right there in the Zillow listing. So, wholesalers, bring us your direct buyers. We'll pay a fee. That's a good sign, right? Complete rehab is required. You don't say. Okay, 1 day on Zillow, so semi-competitive, but remember, a lot of investors are going to be disqualify themselves. Like when you think of investors, some of these guys are, that's what they do. They're full-time rehabbers. But a lot of these guys are like doctors, lawyers. They fix up and fix and rent these properties. A lot of these guys, they're retired. It's not necessarily a full-time job. So for some people, the scope of the work could be too much. So this is just me talking out loud about how I'm thinking of it. I'm already having like a archetype of a certain type of buyer in mind. So when you're looking at properties, it's kind of like how you want to think about this stuff. All right, let's see materials, frame. So yeah, that's not all concrete there, which is not ideal. 1925, not really ideal. And it's funny because the realtors will always say strong comps, and you'll see some of the comps are going to be concrete block houses. They're going to be built in 1980, and these guys are going to be calling them comps. And then when you go and you talk to them, and they're like, "No, you're crazy. You're submitting half the offer price." You're like, you say it nicely, but you're like, "No, you're crazy. That's not an actual comp. Just because it's close by, that doesn't make it a comp, right? It's a very different type of property." So again, we can come down here. This is probably what they're doing. They're probably grabbing something like this and being like, "Well, the comps are 525," and I'm just gonna click on this for whatever. Um, More than double the size of the house, and even though it looks small, it's probably one of those that goes back really far. 4-2. I'm willing to bet. I'm telling you, this is what these guys are calling a comp. And then pass it. Because the area is good, and that's a good sign. Like, these are what they're using as comps because it says sold, sold, sold. So that's why the realtor is saying that. But if you even look at the construction of this house, like, this one probably is a little bit older. Just you can tell by the design, but this is nothing like that. You got a carport here. This one's obviously significantly bigger. I don't remember that other one probably had a flat roof, right? It's another one thing to keep in mind, right? So they're gonna think 500. So you have to be smarter than to think that these are comps and think that this thing's worth $500,000. But keeping in the back of your head, clearly it's still a good area because the properties, despite being a little bit smaller, it's still Miami, and these properties are selling for that, right? Um, so just keep that in mind. And let's go back to our subject property. And what I was saying is, a lot of times I tell you guys the uglier the better, find the ugly stuff. But imagine, would you rather get that house for 210 or maybe this house? I'm assuming it's nicer for 360, right? By the time you put in all that work to the other house, you can just have this and rent it. So that's just like sample idea. Okay, sorry, I lost the. And again, guys, I'm talking you through like my thought process, but when you get good and you practice this, you're just gonna look at this stuff, boom, 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 and like come up with that ballpark metric. Okay. So what did I want to do? Grab that. And with some of these, it's very easy because the properties look very similar, or proximity or what have you. Like all the criteria they use for comps, so like materials, style of house, year built, um, size, right? Subdivision, all that stuff. And and usually you can do it really quickly. But sometimes you do need to do a little investigative research. You might have to click on a comp and go look at it. I mean virtually, like, right, just look at it on your computer and see what it kind of looks like. Yeah, but that kills me a little bit with it, like strong comps. I don't think so, buddy. But who knows? Maybe I could be wrong. All right, so you guys, I'm gonna still talk you through it, but I want you to be doing this. You should be on all these websites yourself, and let me know, what do you guys think that you would offer on a property like this? And then while I'm giving you guys a head start, right? But while you do that, I also want you to think about it. Like, let's do some scenario based stuff. So not so much with this one because it's like super jacked up, but let's say you did your math on a property and it's been on market for like a week, and let's say a good wholesale deal would be, I don't know, 350, right? But it's a good deal, right? But it's only been on market for a week. That means every other wholesaler who's offering is going to offer 350, and or an investor is going to offer a little bit higher. So that's what I mean when I'm saying, like, you got to use common sense as well and not just say, "Oh, well, the formula says 350, I'm going in." That doesn't mean everything you offer has to be super high, because then you'll have to cancel these deals. You won't be able to sell them. You need to come up a little bit more so you have control, so you can send it to the marketplace, so you can test it. And then even during that period, some people, they'll have backup offers, but remember, you can explain, listen, man, the guy, you can have a backup offer that might be higher. He's going to go in, he's going to find the same shit wrong with it. You're going to tie up the property for another 2 months, or you can just go with me. I'm solid. I'm good to go. Especially if you get that feedback from a buyer, because you have it sold. And so then let's say you offered 360 during your inspection period, you'd be able to potentially walk it back down to maybe 340, right? Based on that inspection. So keep that in mind. So if you would, guys, drop in the chat, man. Let me know what you're thinking. Again, I don't necessarily think it's like a great deal, but there's something for everyone, number one. But if I said, hey man, make an offer on this property, what would you guys be thinking? And also, like, other things I think about, like going back to my ideal demographic, most of these guys, because we're in Florida, there's a lot of hurricanes, they want concrete block. You can still sell like frame houses, especially if they're on that concrete slab, but it's a lot more difficult. Houses in 1925, I've sold plenty of houses that are built in the 20s, but in general, like, my buyers typically want to see at least like 1950, right? You don't like buying stuff that old. There's some exceptions in some places, which are like historical districts that like make really good rentals and stuff. But so something like this, even though it's new to market, I would still want to lowball this, because it's going to take a very specific type of investor. That frame is going to be lower. So in some cases, I'll tell you, listen, ARV times 70, not the case. Some areas you want to be ARV times 80. Something like this, man, you probably want to be times 60. And then, those repairs are going to be extensive for sure. So again, we're at 1925, the year built, right? And then, okay, we're all in here. So we're within these, main streets. If anybody knows about Liberty City, that's a rough area. So again, by rental rules, right? What were they asking? 2 and change. We can double check on Zillow, but what's that? It says 1 bedroom. And that's what you're going to go off of, because that's probably what it says on the property appraiser site. Some of these sites can be different, but the property appraiser site is what you go off of. But 650 square feet under air, that's not renting for enough to justify whatever they were asking, 250, even in perfect condition. If you have the money to sit on something like this, I think this area will be coming up, probably more or less like gentrified. There's a lot of people coming in, and there are things happening, but unless you want to sit on it, not really. See, so here, it's like the whole apples to apples thing. 1920, despite being close by, I mean, this is pretty decent, because look, you're on the same street, so this is literally a couple of houses down. But if I had to guess, the construction's going to be different. This is probably going to be concrete block. It's got 2 extra bedrooms. It's more than twice the under air square footage, and it's built in the 1960s. So even though this 490, this is what a realtor is going to tell you. They're going to tell you, like, well, this is right on the same street, and it's 0.12, and so what? It's got 2 extra bedrooms. You can put 2 extra bedrooms in there, but no. If we want, we could really look this thing up, and like, you don't need to. Whatever, we'll do it for the sake of the exercise. But I'm telling you, it's gonna be probably gonna be concrete blocks. Gonna be a different ballgame. I mean, if you have the vision, right, you could get maybe even a little bit close to that. But this is probably, I mean, look at this. And people will use this and try to tell you, this is a comp. And yes, they'll say, like, get some inspiration for this, but this is a way. It's not the same thing we're talking about here. And if that property was concrete block and built in 1960s, like even 50s, yeah, sure, I would use this. And so you might not be able to find something built in the 20s, but then you just have to use, again, that common sense. See right there, materials, concrete block construction. So my point is, as you look at stuff like this often, and the first couple times and many times as you do this, you will want to do what I just did and click on the comp and look at it. But you'll get to a point where, remember when we first looked at it, I'm like, the way that wall is kind of sticking out, and I'm not some like contractor or something. It's just I've seen this enough times where it's like the way that's sticking out. No, that's not what it is, right? And then I was like, I bet you the realtors are gonna be saying this because whatever. Um, and well, I lost our train of thought there, but you guys get what I'm saying. Um, I was basically saying like why that's not like a real comp. There we go. um, so nothing here is like real comp, like maybe something like this, but look, now we're getting much further away. Look at the aerial, right? Like 3. Okay, it's not too far away, but like that's maybe, but like so this would be closer. But then I got to be conservative. So really, before I even think of repairs, I just want to look at probably for this the lowest one. Something they might have, gotten a little luckier. This one's closer. Got 2 bedrooms and it's 36, and it's lower. So just based on that, I'm gonna start my analysis probably with the lowest one available. Um, so if I'm just looking on this page, 390, I think it's still again something like this with that bad condition. I probably want to look at it, but let's just say as of now, I'm starting my starting point at 390, and that could make sense because remember we saw other properties in the not immediate neighborhood. We saw properties around here for like 500, but again, this is going to be concrete block house, I believe, even though it's only built 10 years later. Construction looks different. Probably has central AC. Yeah, concrete blocks. So that makes a big difference, right? But I'm still starting with the lowest comp. Now, because you don't have an exact match to match, that's why you got to use common sense to say, okay, you're starting at the lowest in terms of what the maximum ARV could be. And then common sense wise, just so based on the build alone, we're going to back down from that number. Okay, so is this one we're looking at? 2161. Drop that into part wire. Yep. And this is something where what's gonna happen is because it's new to market, a lot of people may not want to take the initial offer, and because what they consider comps on there, this is something you're gonna offer probably pretty low on, and there's a good chance they're not gonna accept it the first time. This is something that if you wanted to offer on, um, again, it's gonna be for a very specific type of buyer, but it's still Miami. But you're gonna want to follow up on. You're gonna follow up because a lot of investors are gonna put this under contract. Wholesalers are gonna put it under contract too high, and they're all gonna go. Um, Wholesalers either not gonna be able to sell it, or people are gonna go there and they're gonna say this is way too much, and those contracts are all gonna cancel. Then when they come back to you, they have no other options, and then you're gonna come in even lower. um, so yeah, my major concern is obviously gonna be the construction, the frame, the year built, the condition. That's what I'm thinking right now. Okay. Um, see, they probably have. I promise you, some of these realtors, they're like, well, this is Northwest 50th Street. This is Northwest 50th Street, and it's 485. Yeah, this shit's built in 2007, dummy. But listen, they got a job to do. If anyone's dumb enough to do that, that's your own fault. Personal responsibility. It is slacking in society today. So let's say, right, if I'm looking at something like this, like half of what they're asking is probably gonna be too much. Forgot what they were asking. 210, I think. 220. All right. So let's say 390 was the lowest comp that I saw that was kind of the most similar. Even that, I promise you, is too high. And that was also, I believe that one was slightly larger and it's concrete block. But even so, I'll start the exercise even at 390. Even though, by the way, guys, again, way too high. We're going to multiply that by 0.7. Okay. We're at 273. Things probably going to need $80,000 in work. Right. So let's just call it 200. Now, based on this condition, if you went in and offered 200, they would probably eat that up in a heartbeat because we know this is going to be overpriced. Now, if I were to make an initial offer on something like this, I would probably make it at like 150, just based on what I saw. And that's without me going there. That's without internal pictures. And you could research a little bit more, but let's just say I wanted to get it out there. First thing, I'm gonna have a conversation with the realtor. I'm gonna say I'm probably about 150, and then at that point, I'm just looking for control in a ballpark realm that sounds a little bit reasonable. Then I'm gonna send it over to my buyers, and then during that inspection, they're gonna look at it. They're gonna say 150 is too high, and then I'm gonna go back because remember now, if I'm at contract 150, the realtor is thinking, "Oh shit, I'm about to get paid low commission." The person who has this is like, "Man, I'm finally get rid of this property. I'm gonna have 100 grand in my pocket." Then if I come back and say, "Man, we went and saw that thing, man. When I say I would offer 150, yeah, 150 is crazy. But I could do it based on that thing. That's way worse than I thought it was gonna be. I could do that 100. But now it doesn't seem like the optics is not like they dropped the price from 220 to 100, like 120. It's just like it's like 50K more. That might be yeah, it's still a little bit extreme, but my point here is I believe this would be very high price. But also you never know, guys. Like I've had deals where I thought they were slam dunks, like just out of this world, great deals. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm making 50K. And I was not, I think I was telling Heather this the other day, like, I just was not able to sell it for the life of me. And that's with my network. I mean, I sent it to my mentor and like a bunch of groups I'm in, and a bunch of other wholesalers couldn't sell it. And I've had properties where it's like, man, nobody's gonna buy this. I really don't want to even send this to my buyers list because then they're gonna think like, oh, this guy's an amateur, or this guy's one of those joke wholesalers, or he only sends dog shit. Like, I'm not even gonna mess with this dude. And I ended up selling those properties. Oftentimes, like there've been situations where multiple offers come in, start a bidding war. I get more than I even thought for it, right? Um, but again, something like this, even though I think probably like 100 is where it's at. It is Miami. But if you go in on this property, you start at 100. It's a good chance what has been on market like one day. Okay, they're probably not gonna take that. If I went in at like 150, then after we did those uh inspection, my buyers saw it, I maybe try and walk them down to 100. Maybe they say I can't do 100, maybe 115, 120. I'd ask my buyer, can you do that? See if I can make it work. And especially these on markets, man, you're not putting anything into this, right? So even something like this, it might not be a $40,000 profit for you, but look, something like this, if I call, we bullshit around, like 5 emails go back and forth, my buyer ends up being happy, and I make 2 grand on it. It's 2 grand I didn't have before. I'm happy with that. I'll take that all day. And then goes into the marketing, and it turns into that 2 grand is the catalyst for a marketing campaign that does turn to 20 grand. It does turn to 40 grand or what have you, right? And remember, the rehab might be a lot for most people, but for the right buyer, this is still Miami real estate. I wouldn't even call it up and coming. I believe everywhere down there will be at some point. They're not making any more land. It's a rough area right now, but for people who have the capital, maybe want to sit on it, it's definitely possible, right? Somebody owned that before. But I would say, yeah, I could maybe go in 150 and try and talk them down to 100. Maybe we agree on 110. Maybe my buyer could do 112, and you kind of do this little dance around um, until you can get it sold. And again, I've been surprised by things, man. There may be very well be an investor who goes in and pays 200 for that. Wouldn't be me, right? Um, I'm just trying to show you the process that like you don't have to like run the comps and like do the whole calculator thing and figure everything out. Like a little bit of common sense and like some ideas. Does anyone have questions on this one? I'm gonna check. I'm sorry guys if the sound is really messed up. I will work on that for the next time. Actually, let me try one more thing. We're already pretty late into our thing, but we try and keep talking. I think that might be better. That should be a little bit better. But I'll do some practicing and see if I can tweak some of this stuff for our next thing. Okay, but any questions on this? Questions at all? All right, let's go look at take a second and maybe look at another one. Oh, Miami Gardens. I love Miami Gardens. Wow, I'm surprised. Look, that's actually pretty nice. I kind of don't want to look at it, right? The outside is that's sloppy work. This can usually be these must be what? This is not really matching, like the bars on the window and then this inside. It's interesting. I wonder if that other one's an older picture. Or this is looking connected. Oh, maybe that's okay. Let's see if we find something a little bit better where we can do what would be like a something good for wholesale. Let me look at some of my searches and see which ones I have by maybe a good keyword, better keyword. Okay, so I got vacant there. And yes, in the meantime, guys, any questions, make sure you drop those, please. We look at this one already. And just so you know, guys, like, let's say you're here, the way I have these things set up, basically here. And that's how you can find deals on the MLS. Like, look at that. I typed in the word damage. Whoa. And there we go. That's like you can be that simple as finding deals. This would probably be great for a wholesale deal. It's in Miami. We know there's demand. It's a concrete block house. You can see from the outside, it's obviously jacked up. This stuff is dated. I'm going to tell you the roof is probably completely needs to be replaced. Inside's damaged. And again, this doesn't necessarily make it a great deal, but it could be a good deal for the right investor. It looks like it had fire damage. Fire damage can be a little bit tough because if there's a lot of fire damage, it's not one of those properties where you can just go and do patchwork in there. Typically have to go down to the city and get like all blueprints and file all your permits and do everything perfectly. A lot of rehabbers, they don't necessarily do that. A lot of your cash buyers won't do that. Like in Broward County, for example, I think it's like somewhere like 90% of the houses have some form of like illegal addition or unpermitted work done on the property. So yeah, something like this, the numbers have to be really, really good for that to work. That would though. Okay. But again, like that was just as simple as me going to Zillow, typing in the word damage, and there's potential there. That's how easy it can be. And there are literally hundreds of those words you can use. So even if you're not doing heavy off market stuff, like this is, and just one of these deals can fund an off market campaign, and an off market campaign where you don't have to even touch the property. I'm sorry, you don't even have to touch, let's say if you like a direct mail campaign, you don't have to do that yourself anymore. Like if you want to get a VA, you don't have to be doing all of the minutia type work. All right, anyway, let's take a look at this and see what we think, okay? So 340, the first thing, this estimate's saying like 333, so I'm going to be very skeptical, but if that were the case, that's going to be overpriced. But it's Miami, so it's probably going to be overpriced anyway. Investor special, fire damage requires a full rehab, okay? So if we use our cheat sheet, just something to tuck away in the back of your mind, full rehab, 12,000 square feet, right? We just keep this in our mind. Boom, about 65 with fire damage. It's going to be higher than that, right? So but we want to make sure we can get the contract, right? So, um, I might keep that number like 80 in the back of my head. But remember, what I'm saying is if I do my formula with the repair estimate at like 60 and I end up getting the contract, when the buyer goes on the inspection, when it comes back as more, I can go to the seller and say, man, I made you that offer because I thought the repairs would be estimated at about 60. Once we went in there, that's at least a $100,000 job or whatever the number is, right? And that's how I can kind of justify it, right? So now let's see. Remember other things we're gonna look on. 8 days on Zillow. Okay, so we do want to be a little bit competitive because there may be some competition, but we don't need to be super competitive because this type of rehab is for a certain type of more experienced buyer. This is not like my retired dad who will like buy something and go and do like the painting himself and then kind of put a tenant in there or something. That's not um this type of buyer. Although my dad can do some good work, so not a great example, but someone's dad. Okay. Let's see where we're going with this. These are things I even look at too, right? Because if you can see, right, and it's also more reliable when you're on the property appraiser site. If I can see that someone bought this for 129, it gives me an idea of how much equity they might have. Like, is this fully paid off? Like, obviously you could dive into that and research, and some of that stuff you can find publicly. Sometimes you won't actually find it until you do like a proper title search. People could take out second mortgages and things like that. But if I'm like, okay, maybe this guy paid 129, right? If he kind of even breaks even on that, that would be like living there for 10 years without paying rent. Like kind of things like that. Just again, it's not a comping method, but when I think about comps as a wholesale, I'm also thinking about what can I sell this for? What makes sense? How can I like dive into the seller's mind kind of and see what's going on there. So yeah. So you got these nearby homes, similar homes. I'm always passing this thing. Hey, there's our other house there. We should come back. I'm gonna put a watch on this, and we'll come back on one of our future calls. Be curious to look at these and see what they sell for. If I don't call on these myself. Okay, so we're seeing sold here 460, and then I'm seeing like, is most of the neighborhood even around the same? Are we seeing wild swings like that last property? One's like 500,000, one's 200,000, like within a 1 block radius. And here, a lot, some of them, there's some variation, obviously, but like 370s, 370s, this one's 50K more, 360s. So a lot of them are in the same area, which is also leading me to believe that this property is overpriced. In this area, though, people are overpaying, probably more than that 70% in many cases. But let's do a little bit more investigative work. And the people who price this at 380 probably, again, looked at something like this, 530. But even if you look at the construction of this house from the aerial, right, and also how big it is in that corner lot, it's a very different house. And that's what the person looked at who priced this, and or the realtor. Some realtors, I used to think because realtors were in the business, hang on one second. I'm looking at the chat. How come it's the real estate found that property and not a wholesaler first? I really couldn't tell you, right? It's a seller who was motivated. If a wholesaler got to them first, they probably would have sold it directly to a wholesaler. But think about it, man. When you have a property that that is a pain in the ass, most people don't know that wholesalers exist. There's very few people who are like, man, my house is fire damaged, or man, I got divorced, man, I had an eviction. Let me call a wholesaler. Right? What happens is the way most wholesalers get deals is they're reaching out to those people, whether it's by their marketing, a phone call, an email, a piece of direct mail, and then the person gets the postcard and they say, "Oh shit, yes, I do want to sell my house for cash." Most people don't know wholesalers exist, so who do they know exists? Realtors. They call a realtor, "Man, can you sell this property for me?" Once they sign the listing agreement, then it ends up on the MLS. However, it's still fair game for wholesalers. And when you have something like this, here's the other thing, is that when you have something that's burnt to shit like this, or the other property that we looked at a minute ago, those properties, despite them being listed on the MLS, they will not qualify for a traditional mortgage. So that FHA, a bank is not going to loan on this property because there's too much risk. Someone moves in there, the ceiling collapses, they fund it. Someone moves in, the ceiling collapses, the person dies, the family sues, the house is messed up. So banks don't loan on these properties. So even though it is listed, it's only going to be suitable. Only a cash buyer or hard money, buyer using hard money, or someone using private money, only an investor is going to buy that anyway. Now, a cash buyer could go in and get this before you do and essentially cut out wholesalers. But again, a lot of cash buyers, they're not in here every day. Like I tell you guys, like I tell my students, these guys are a lot of them, again, doctors, lawyers, they have day jobs, or they're making enough money where they don't care to be in here doing this, or they don't like it, or they don't like talking to people. You know how many people would say, I would gladly pay you 5 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand, so I don't have to do this every day, so I don't have to cold call people, so I don't have to manage a VA, so I don't have to look at this shit. Just bring me the deal. If I make 50 and you make 10, we're good. Okay, so what you have to do, your job as a wholesaler, is to tie this up. And once you get it under contract, that means of the 8 billion people in the world, you're the only one who has the rights to legally buy this. So when sometimes you hear these buyers say things like, well, is it, did it come from the MLS? And they're basically saying that with this implied notion that they could just go to the MLS, right, and get it. But what you have to make clear to them is, I have it under contract and I'm the only one that can sell it to you. And sometimes I'll say, yeah, I'm wholesaling, but if I don't find a buyer, I'm just going to close on it myself. So they don't think that they can go behind my back and try to get it, or go put in a backup offer to get it. So that's one thing. And then the other people that you hear saying, like, well, if it's on the MLS, I don't want it. You'll have people ask you, I want off-market deals only. I get that a lot. Usually when I hear that, I think this is an amateur. Of course, people are entitled to their opinions and their preferences, but I think this is like an amateur. They went to a fortune builder seminar, and they heard that somewhere. They read it on Bigger Pockets, or this is another wholesaler who doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Because anytime they ask me that question, I will respond to them. I say, you want off market only? They're like, yes. And I say, you're not interested in anything on MLS? They'll say no. And again, when I'm saying MLS, it means I have it under contract. I'm not just like sending them listings, right? Because that means, if I send them a listing, it means they could have found it themselves. If I have it under contract, they can't get it without me. And so I'll say to them, okay, well, let me just ask you, just as I'm taking your information, if I have a property that's worth, where you can make 20,000 off market, and I have a property where you can make 80,000 that was on market, do you not want me to send you the one that was previously listed? And I like the phrase previously listed. And if they're serious, they're almost always going to say, well, yeah, I mean, in that case, duh. But the point I'm making is, a real cash buyer does not give a shit where you get the deal from. They just want to know if you're the only person that can give it to them, and how much money can they make on it. That's all they care about. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers that question. Oops. So hopefully, I'm hoping that was your question and answered that. Okay. All right, so we're back here. So listen, my initial thing is like, this is gonna be overpriced. You're gonna make an offer. It's probably gonna get rejected. So that's why, again, something like this, even let's just assume for a minute our numbers come out to, like, I don't know, maybe 200, right? I'm not gonna submit an offer at 200 because it's 140K off, and it's probably gonna get rejected. What I might do is I might maybe submit something at like 250, and then I kind of know I'm gonna get outbid because of wholesalers offering too high, and other investors trying to beat the competition, but also offering too high, maybe trying to use the back out strategy, but I think they're gonna be too high to back out that much. And then when the realtor comes back to me, when this doesn't close, when multiple cancels happen, I'm going to be proactive and keep following up. And that's how I'm going to capture something like this. Because it's only been here 8 days, it's probably less likely that I'm going to grab it on my first go. Especially in this area, I think people are going to offer a little bit high. But let's look at this a little bit deeper. All right. Where are we? Let me grab this. And again, remember all these strategies. Like you can always go deeper on this stuff, right? You can go to property appraiser. You can, and then if you guys get into the paid tool stuff, you can look at Privy and things like that. But a lot of times that you don't even need to, right? This is enough. So 419. So like, what did I say off rip, man? I was just that wasn't even quick comp. I was just randomly kind of guessing there. But remember, we don't use these algorithm based things. I'm just curious to see where we land from here. 300, right? And these guys are at 80, and that shit needs like 80,000 in work. So like around 200, right? I think that's kind of what I said in the beginning. So we're way far apart, but again, if the thing was in pristine condition and we're far apart, like don't even pursue it. But something like that, no one's buying that for 380, man. And again, maybe someone will, but they're not doing it properly. They people get lucky, but I don't think that's where this is going. Not to mention home prices are on their way down, and there's gonna be a lot of like professional buyer activity going on. But anyway, okay, so what I said before, proximity wise, see we got this main road here. So be just conscious, cognizant that like these areas, even though it's close in proximity, could be very different neighborhood. These things separated by like again parks, waterways, railroads. I-95 is here. That's how a lot of the subdivisions tend to get split up as well, right? But see, like this is all kind of the same neighborhood, right? And we're all in the same numbers here. So even though this is number one, I'll still look at it, right? And I haven't even looked at the actual numbers yet. But grain of salt. And I'm probably going to put more emphasis on 2, 3, 5, and 6. I could be wrong because it could be different years built, all kinds of things. Thing I like about this property is concrete block, and I like that. And there's a lot of demand in this area. Okay. So first thing I'm looking, all pretty close proximity. Obviously, the half mile, less weight on that. We don't really want to look at that one so much, right? And we're disqualifying in stages, but these are all close enough. Okay. Sometimes you'll see things on the exact same block. That's really nice. We don't have that here, but we have the next block over. This is gonna be our closest one. Next, we're gonna look at beds and baths. So 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. We got a 3-1 here. Okay, but this is I think our closest one. Yeah. Okay. And a year built, right? Now this says 95. Sometimes the year built with this particular website is off. 1951. What we're looking at right. See, I told you that. I don't know why on that website sometimes it happens, but it didn't look to me like that was correct. So this is built in 1951. For the most accurate information, always go to the property appraiser site. Zillow's pretty good about pulling that over. This site, the information, remember, it's just a bank estimator site, but I like to look at it because it's quick and fast. And then if I need to do additional research, I can go in. But usually, like sales price is legit. But this is not built in 1995. It's built in 1951. So, okay, 330. It's built in 28, so that's expected to be lower. So that's making sense in my narrative, right? This one, built in 1951, like 2-bedroom, 1-bath, very, very similar. House slightly smaller, but lot size largely bigger. Now the under air is obviously more important, but this is just telling me like it's kind of the same thing, but they're just like built a little different. And 380, that makes sense to me. Most people, when they're trying to sell properties, they're gonna try and sell it for what they probably think it's worth. That's probably right about where we're at. Actually, in this place, let me rephrase it. That is probably a little bit higher than that. And the damages is gonna take it way below that, right? But that kind of makes sense, right? So here we got 3-1. This is semi-significantly higher, 441. Remember, it's built 1 year before, so that's pretty good. It does have 1 additional bedroom, so that's could be adding to the narrative why it's slightly higher. So if I'm looking at this one at 380, right? And this was like sales price. And remember, you can always go deeper. Maybe that one was a rehab and sold to an investor, right? But again, we're making some assumptions because if I went and looked at each one of these, you can still do it pretty quickly, but maybe this is low because it was in bad condition and it was going to an investor, right? And maybe this one was fixed up and nice, which is why you have the discrepancy. So you could look at stuff like that, but for the sake of, the quick company stuff, we're just going to take that as the value, right? So we're at 380, 2-1, and 441 on the higher side, but the 441 is an additional bedroom, right? And larger. So yes, I'm going to assume that my price ARV wise is going to be below that. Okay. So right now, if I'm leaning into this, I'm leaning in at about 400, right? ARV, that's without looking at the repairs, but that's kind of where I am. We're seeing that here, although I'm taking this one with a grain of salt, and that's where I am so far, right? I'm not making any final decisions, but that's about where I am. And then this one, a little bit further away, 1950s, cool. We keep that tucked away in the back. 2-1, okay, 445. And then remember, as a wholesaler, you're the middleman. So you're not being disingenuous or like making stuff up, but you are, when you're talking to your cash buyers, you want to show potential. So if you're showing them comps, right, you do want to be honest, ethical, but you want to show them, hey, I'm not making this up, this is the legitimate potential here. So I would show them 445, and if there's a 450, those are the comps that I'm going to provide, because investors are always going to assume anyway that now I'm not going crazy with this stuff, right? Because you don't want to like damage your reputation. Like there's this fine line too. But I'm not necessarily going to be sending them the comp at 330. Now, when I'm talking to the seller or a realtor and they're like, your offer is way too low, that's when I'm not going to mention this stuff here, right? And I'm going to say, well, look, this is the comp, man. The comps that I'm finding, I got to be conservative, right? And I'm gonna send them this, 330, and then they'll probably send me back this, and I'll say, yeah, but that's a 3-bedroom, right? And then there's, you get that little back and forth when you're kind of justifying this stuff, right? So right now, just off the top of my head, right about 4. I'm talking too much. I'm like losing my train of thought. Even if we called it 4, 2-1, 2-1. And where was the date? 24, 25. Okay. So yeah, I'm probably thinking maybe a little bit above 4. Quick glance. Okay, we got some here. Let's go here real quick. Let's glance at this home value thing. Yeah, I said above 4, so we're getting to that zone. Let's check a prop wire. Just going through this really. I'm gonna go a little bit faster. But also while I'm doing this, guys, just remember, man, like again, you want not necessarily doing this for every property. Like when you're doing your cold calls, and people are like, do I run all my comps before I cold call? It's like, no, you would never get through enough. You need volume for cold calling. You cold call, then you get some interest. Then you can do stuff, or if you get some interest, like someone responds on your website, then you can like look at this stuff beforehand and go into the call a little bit warmer. Sometimes someone calls you, hey, I want to sell my house. You pull this up and you got to do it while you're on the phone. Okay. So that's where it starts with this, but it all goes into, everything is a piece of the puzzle, right? So you have those conversations, you understand situations, you get them to say their asking price first, things like that. Okay, let's go down here because I kept you guys here a while. We are running down on our time here. This is a sold price 2025. 3-1, 440. I think we looked at that one before. So again, knowing that those repairs are extensive, something like this, I think if it's done nice, it can go for more than 4. Maybe get into where those 440s are, but let's just call it 4. And we'll use this as our baseline times 0.7, 280. It's probably 80 grand worth of damages. So, you probably want to be, and what I do, especially with you guys, with my students, I kind of tier this off. So I'll tell you something like this. um, I'll be like, "Yo, Tim, man, I looked at the property. If you can get me this property for $200,000, I will sell it for you this weekend 100%." Right? Then I'll say, "Okay, but now if you're at 250, probably like 70% chance I'll sell it. If you're at 280, 290, call it like 50-50, right? But don't not make the offer. Go for it. And then remember, even when we're at the 290, we can have someone go in, look at the property, say, come back to me, Mike, you are crazy, man. I'm not paying. And sometimes when these buyers, by the way, they'll go on appointments, and if they don't like it, they just won't respond. They won't call you back. So you have to, again, you don't put other people in charge of your pockets. That's when you have to be proactive and you call them, hey man, what'd you think about the house? Bro, you are crazy. That shit is so damaged. Yeah, man, I understand. Like some of these guys are a little bit unrealistic with this stuff. I hadn't personally seen the house, I told you that before. But let me ask you, what would you pay for it? Well, I'm not touching that thing. Yeah, I know. But like, let's just say if you could name your own price, what would you do? Man, I'd have to be at, 220. Yeah, but is that the best you can do? Well, man, you don't understand, blah, blah. Okay, talk to me about it. Well, I don't know. Maybe I could do 230. Maybe I send him some comps. Yeah, but did you see this comp? This was 450. This was, whatever. Yeah, but I can't just look at the whole, I get it. Okay, well, listen, man. Let me ask you this. If I can get this to you at 230, are you for sure going to take this? Yeah, okay. Well, tell me a little bit about the house. If he has an inspection report, I ask for that. Everything wrong with it, I take that information. Now I'm just gonna regurgitate to my seller. Listen, man, I know we said whatever it was, 280. But we went in there, and it's way worse than we thought. I don't think if you want to take your chances, or if you want to fix it up and put it on the MLS or whatever, you can probably get more. But man, it needs a lot of work. And then sometimes that's all you need to say. But the more you can itemize it, the better. I have an advanced strategy for that as well. But then you just, you're explaining yourself justifying. So listen, man, this thing's really bad. And a lot of people are going to probably make you offers and cancel them and whatever, whatever. If you are serious about doing this, you want to get out of this property, no repairs, no rehabs, no anything, you want to finalize this, we need to be at 220. And, I'll sign the paperwork, inspection period will be done. And we'll get you out of here closed. As long as we have free and clear title, we'll get you out of here, in the next week. What do you say, right? And then your buyer already told you they're good for 230. So then you're going to go in and try and get it at 220. That's how the deal is going to kind of look. So what I'm trying to do is just contrast that with the people who are, again, that the whiteboard teaching where it's like ARV is this perfect number. And then, times this by square footage and this, and that's going to take a whole long time, number one. And remember, if you're just doing this once, that's fine. But like, you should be doing this all the time, right? Even as practice to get good at it. And then you're doing square footage, and then their buyer completely disagrees with their estimate anyway. And then they think, okay, I got the perfect number, and that's what I have to sell it at. It's like, nah, you can still talk to people and explain things and educate your sellers and educate your buyers and explain why you need things at certain rates and how it works, but how it's going to be beneficial for them, etc. That's kind of the secret sauce where deals are made, where you don't hear people talk about it that much because it's much easier to just show a formula. And also because every deal is going to be a little bit different. Every area is a little bit different. Every market, you have to test it. You have to send it to buyers. You have to get feedback from your market on what the marketplace is willing to pay for these things. So again, for me, something like this, probably about 200 is where I would be at. I think if I said that correctly. But again, if these guys are at 340, I thought they were at 380. Maybe I messed that up. But anyway, I don't know where I got that number. But I'm trying to talk and then whatever, dance around this thing. Anyway, 8 days on the market, they're gonna be hoping for more. And again, you're gonna probably see things like this where people do overpay. Um, yeah, I'd probably want to be about 200, honestly, for me to say this is 100% a wholesale deal. Wow. But I don't think, especially for a listed property, they would go for that. So if I were to submit an offer, I'm not going to go $140,000 less than what they want. Like, even if I have that number in my head at like 200, I'm probably going to want to offer, I don't know, maybe 250, certainly not 100K less, maybe come to like 260, 265. It's going to be high. Then the buyer's going to go in, they're going to say you're crazy, and then I'm going to try and walk them back down to closer to like 230 or so. And then other things do impact this, right? So like if this was, instead of 8 days, was 80 days, that's also going to impact how much I offer, because I feel like there's not, that level of competition is not there, right? And yeah, remember when you're calling on things like this, especially like the on market, even though off market, you guys, you know your script, right? But on market, you can still fish for that intel, right? And talk to the realtor like a human being, right? You don't have to be perfect with this stuff or have the perfect script or assume that you know everything. Hey man, this looks like it needs a shitload of work. You tell me a little bit more about it. I'm looking at the pictures. It looks like, I mean, what do you think it's worth? Like if you had a realtor, I don't know. They say I don't know a lot. You're supposed to be a professional. You're supposed to be representing these people. You should know. But anyway, that's when you just say, yeah, I know you don't know. You're not a contractor or anything, right? But if you had to ballpark it, what would you think? Well, it's certainly not 20, probably not like 500, like 1,000. Where are we in between here, right? Just ballpark it for me, man. Then they're gonna try and give you an idea. Hey, man, where are the sellers like living close by, or they're out of state? Well, listen, man, if I come in and pay cash, I mean, I know you can't say, and I know you're looking at other offers, but we're looking to pick up like 2 properties a month. Be happy if you have other stuff to show us as well. But if we pay all cash, no repairs, as is. I think those with the fire damage is going to be a lot more, because I got to go down to the city and get the blueprints and pull all permits and do all work has to be all up to code. The codes change, right? These properties, when they're built in the 40s and you just keep selling them, if stuff's not up to code, it's not like you have an inspector coming through the house and checking on it, right? You just keep renting it or whatever. But when something's getting you file a permit and then you're doing work on something that had fire damage, like the inspector's got to come in and check everything, and it's got to be up to the latest code. So that's why also some of these things get even more expensive than your traditional rehab costs. And that's why I use like those kind of round numbers, because you're probably not getting it right anyway when you're doing the more complex way. All right. In terms of as a wholesaler, obviously we again are being more diligent as a cash buyer or an actual investor. But that's kind of my point, right? And then I would that's how I would talk around this, and that's about where I think that needs to be a deal. But notice that just because I think the deal probably needs to be at 200, I would probably not make that offer on this, because it's on market, because it's 8 days, because it would be silly, because it would not get accepted. And that's why the numbers don't need to be perfect. I would try and get somewhere in the ballpark, see if they would come down, entertain like a 265-ish, try and walk it back, see if my buyer might come up. Hey, maybe it's Miami, it's up and coming area. Like that's not how you run comps. But some people, listen, people are still people. They're emotional. Some people buy that way. And this neighborhood, it's up and coming, it's growing, it's close to XYZ. You're gonna make a it's gonna be a good investment for you, right? And that's how that goes. Okay, so man, Tim, I'm gonna be doing this with you on deals, man. So when you get people that tell me you're interested, that's when you let me know I'm your partner. We come in and we do that stuff together. So we will do some sales, sir. Very much looking forward to it. So listen, I kept you guys for a while. I did want to start a little bit earlier today than some of the normal stuff I do, but I think this is helpful, and you can't do this stuff enough. So reach out if you want to do this again, guys. For next week, for my students that are here, we'll go back to like our private session, do some stuff there. I have stuff for some of you guys, so I'll be like Chuck stuff, and I don't know, I'll text you guys, right? For anyone who's watching this on YouTube or is not in the program or has not or wants any, I don't know, the spreadsheets or stuff that I show, guys, I'm pretty accessible. I try to respond to a lot of stuff. So if you need something, if you need help, if you want a JV, I'm an email away, Mike@wholesalingmike.com. Hit me on Instagram, Mike Hill TWT. If you're interested in working together, JVing together, do deals together, and or mentorship, just book a call with me. I do a couple of those every week. wholesalingmike.com/call. And please, any questions, the replay will be up. So just drop them in the comment section, man, so I can come in and explain it a little bit more, or go into more details, or do more examples, or if you guys want me to again, I wanted to do this completely blind today, but if you want me to go in, do it more thorough, do it faster, show you what it looks like in real time, I don't know, I'm coming off the top of my head here, but whatever you need, just let me know, man. Okay, put in the comments. Students, I'll send out updates. Some of you guys, one-on-one guys, I'll text you individually. Group, I'll send out emails. And I guess on that note, last call for any questions. If you guys have questions, let me know now. If something comes to you later. Students, either, I don't know, call me, email me, text me, or drop it in our Facebook group. See if I missed anything. I don't think so. But thank you guys for joining. If you're watching on the replay, thank you guys for watching. I hope this makes sense. I know sometimes I either talk fast or things maybe aren't clear. So please, 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 if you need feedback, I'm your man. Just put it in the comment section and I'll hook you up. All right. I don't think we have any further questions. So if you guys think of something afterwards, you know where to find me. Again, I'm a DM, email, or for some of you guys, a text message away. So let me know. Best of luck, everybody, man. There's a lot of potential out here. Again, today, that could easily be a deal. And yeah, it's just a numbers game, but sometimes like one word in a search, you'll come up with 3 properties, you make a couple offers, you follow up. Like, it can be that simple. Don't overcomplicate this shit. I guess that's another thing I was trying to get out of here. Okay. All right. So thanks a lot for joining, guys. And have a great weekend. Stay diligent, keep working. For those of you who, whatever your strategy, cold calling, a lot of you guys are doing that now. Keep making your calls. Keep me posted. Let me know what's going on. Updates in our mastermind group. Have a great weekend. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Out. Peace.